Hello, everyone. Dr. Andrew Dell'Antonio, is the Director of Undergraduate Studies at the Butler School of Music in the College of Fine Arts at the University of Texas at Austin, as well as Distinguished Teaching Professor in and Head of the Butler School's Musicology and Ethnomusicology Division. He is co-editor with William Chung of the book series Music and Social Justice from the University of Michigan Press, and is co-author of the textbook The Enjoyment of Music from W.W. Norton. While his early career focused on musical traditions of early modern Europe, more recently he has collaborated with academic and community scholars to open access for conversation about disabled and neurodivergent musical culture, both inside and outside of academia. The broader goal of his collaborations is to seek practical applications of universal design for learning, also known as UDL, to music historiography and higher education pedagogy from perspectives informed by critical disability studies as well as his own lived experience of neurodivergence. And I can speak from personal experience, both working with Dr. Dell'Antonio and taking classes from him, that he is a wonderful advocate, that he absolutely practices what he teaches, and I want to welcome him today.
Thank you all. Thank you, Heather. It's really a pleasure. I don't get to come to Sydney nearly often enough, and now I feel the need to do so more often. It's not that far from Montreal, where I live. And it's a lovely drive. And I thank you all for helping me have this nice drive down, and for being so many of you here to hear from those of us who care a lot about questions of access and questions of accessibility to education, different strategies that we might use to help students, all students learn. And I really appreciate that we have a number of students here, as well as members of the community. And I'm delighted that there are extra lunches, or rather dinners, although thankfully I've been given my box, so you don't have to worry about stealing my dinner. I really don't want to take too much time. I'm going to start with a few remarks to set up some points, some issues that Heather helped us as panelists think about. But then I also want to make sure to honor the knowledge and the commitment of the folks who are here at Texas Lutheran doing the work every day. I know how much when I'm at UT Austin, it's really great to have folks come in and provide their perspectives and hopefully some new ideas, but they take off, they leave, and we're left holding the bag, fixing the thing. And these are the folks who are doing it, and so I want to make sure that we're clear on the fact that, okay, I might have some ideas to bring, but these folks here also do, and it's a conversation. You all have seen that there's a handy-dandy bit.ly QR code there on the top left. If you'd like to follow along with Bouncing Ball, this is one way that those of us who try to provide greater access try to go about it, to have it possible for people to read as we speak if they wish. Now granted, I won't be reading word for word off of the slides, but the slides will give you the main points of the kinds of things I'll say, and I'll try not to go on at too much length with each slide. Also, at the end of the slides, I'm not going to fast forward through them right now, but you will see that there are several pages worth of links and additional stuff to look at. That, frankly, is the most valuable thing I think that I'm bringing to you all, because this is the stuff that I learned from. Over the years, I've been trying to build my classes, but I've also been reading and thinking a lot and learning from fellow scholars, from students, and from people who are not employed in academic positions, but are learners, and people who may not have had access to academic training for various reasons. And this is one of the things that we, at least I think about a lot, is who are we leaving out? And how can we try to avoid leaving people out, whether they come into our campus or otherwise. So I'll start by just saying a word or two about the whole reason that we're here, and I gather that the Krost Symposium has been set up the way it is. Our educational systems, on the one hand, are fantastic, and I always struggle when people criticize the work that we do at public schools, at private schools, at universities, because those of us who try to help people learn are working very, very hard, and often for compensation that is not as adequate as it might be. But it's true that there are steep steps to get into academia, get into universities, certain kinds of schools, because they were not built for everybody in the first place. And this metaphor of steep steps is one that Jay Dolmage uses, and I'm going to throw a couple of names around. All these names are at the end, and I can also provide these to you if you email me. My email address is there. He wrote a very interesting book about the lack of access, the way that academia, the way that universities were built to exclude, and not just to include. And one of the things he talks about is this metaphor of the steep steps up to the main building, the beautiful steps. But not everybody can get up the steps. And it's not just the physical steps, but other kinds of steps as well. Also, there are so many more people, thankfully, coming to higher education. And a number of them have had really good support in the K-12 system through what's called the IDEA program. So you may know this. There's an act that required every child to have a free and appropriate public education. It wasn't as well funded as it was federally as it might have been, but it says every child needs to have a customized education. And in fact, the Supreme Court said it has to be not just any old education, but one that really will help them flourish. This is great. K-12 students come out of K-12, they come to college and they realize that's not the same rule in college. In college, there's the American with Disabilities Act, which is great. It says that one cannot discriminate against people who are disabled, and there's a, I'm not going to go at length about this. If you have questions about this afterwards, we're happy to answer them. But what the American Disability Act talks about is reasonable accommodation. It isn't everybody gets exactly what they say they need. It's they get what their employer, their professor, thinks is reasonable. So there's a great deal of authority that we have as faculty to say, that doesn't seem reasonable. Now, it's a tension, and we can talk about that more. So I think we really need to shift the focus from thinking of students as people who are demanding things, data points, failures, to thinking about how do we build or rebuild systems to help people get flourish as much as possible. Can we make higher education similar, more similar to K-12, in that we are in fact offering everybody a chance to flourish their own way, according to the best possibilities. So I want to introduce a couple of frameworks that some of you may be familiar with already, and then, of course, we will be talking more about these frameworks and nuancing them more and going into other issues. So let me go, I think, with these, my slides work. I might as well leave now because I've succeeded. Okay, so this is a theme for today, this evening. Thanks to Heather, who formulated this excellent theme. This idea that utilizing a universal design for learning approach, this abbreviation UDL, we'll be using a fair amount today. So that's going to be, hopefully, won't lose too many abbreviations, but that's one. Not only acknowledges and includes neurodivergent learners, I'm going to define that for you in a second, and other learners with disabilities, but benefits everyone. This is a formulation that is along the lines of what sometimes is called the curb cut effect. Some of you may have heard of this formulation, which is from this approach that was called universal design, that was how can we design for everybody ideally, but so that as many people as possible can enter a space. And the curb cut, that is to say, if you're going along a curve and there is a slope, that allows somebody who is a wheelchair user to move over the curve better, but also somebody who's pushing a stroller. Also somebody who, for whatever reason, is not quite as mobile. Somebody with a bicycle. So curb cuts actually help everybody. And if you've ever pushed a stroller, you suddenly realize, those curb cuts are pretty damn handy, aren't they? Right? So this idea that if you are changing things or building things, ideally, to help people who might not be able to go over that curb or the ramp into the building, you are making access easier for everybody, not just for those people. Of course, part of the situation with curb cuts originally was they didn't exist and people had to protest to get them built. They were retrofitted originally. Now, curb cuts get built in whenever people make curbs. And so it's a universal design approach for physical access on sidewalks and roads. So universal design for learning, what could that mean? What is this principle? So this is the structure of what I want to convey to you. I'm trying to keep an eyeball on the time so we don't eat up your entire day, blah, blah, blah. And besides, I want to have my colleagues join this conversation and have your questions for all of us. But this is sort of some of the things I want to bring out as a starting point. One is this terminology, neurodiversity, neurodivergence, and the idea of a normal, or this other term I'm going to introduce you to, a term that I like very much, the normate. And I'll explain that in a moment. Then various ways that this concept of universal design for learning has been defined and characterized. And I'll go through briefly a few ways people describe this. And again, I'll be making reference to some of the things that I've put in the back of the slides that are various essays and blog sites and so forth. And then, what are the opportunities, but also the tensions, potentially, between this approach, UDL, which many of us think is all that in a bag of chips, and the particular concept of neurodiversity or neurodivergence, which is something that people have started thinking about a little more recently. It's not a super new term, but it's a relatively growing term, and more people are connecting to this idea of neurodiversity, and I think it's actually a very, very important idea. And I think it's compatible, but there are moments of tension, and I wanted to touch on those. And then I want to take a couple of moments with this idea of access, and how that's another way of thinking of things, right? You can design things for learning, and then you can think about access. And they're not incompatible, but it's a different way of thinking, and I like to think about access. Because access, from my mind, is something that people do with each other. And everybody can do access. And I think everybody needs to do access with that thing. And then some kind of conclusion. Okay, so this is actually, this is a very important point, and one that is not universally accepted, no points are universally accepted, but is increasingly embraced as a reality of the kind of biodiversity, right? People have different height, people have different size feet, people have different brains. In fact, brains all the more so because every brain is different. This is something that anybody who studies neurology knows, that there aren't, we're unique snowflakes, right? No two brains are the same, and so this is the phenomenon of neurodiversity. So at the starting point, we could think of it as sort of a biological fact. What are the consequences of this, right? If we all have different brains, then we have our brains, each of our brains operates a slightly different way. And so then here we come into the notion of, okay, well, are some brains broken? And some brains are not broken? Or are all brains different, period? It's a natural variation issue. And yeah, some brains might have trouble in some circumstances and others, but there's no way to say, okay, obviously this brain is wrong, is broken, and so forth. And again, this is not as obvious a slam dunk case, but I want you to walk with me with it, because it's an important beginning standpoint. So if that's the case, then a lot of us, it's not just academia, right? We've had a lockdown with COVID. COVID's still kind of around someplace, but somewhere in here. But people aren't as worried about it, but there's so many other things that are happening that thinking that things are normal and should stay normal is really hard these days. And after the lockdown, some of you experienced this, we came back in person. And people said, oh, everything is fine. But it isn't. All the students I talk to say it isn't fine. The idea that things are the same as before is not. So can we think about a different way of conceptualizing what normal might or might not be? And this is a term from the School of Disability Studies. This is something that I've been learning a lot about over the last 10 years, thinking about disability from a wide variety of cultural perspectives. And there is a very, very smart scholar who has talked about the idea that there is a social normal, but it's defined by those who are in charge. And in order not to use the word normal, which everyone wants to be normal, right? So normal is a good word. She invented this word normate, which sounds a little more swirly than normal, and says this is what normal really is in terms of social behavior and people, is that people try to approximate a norm that is posited by those who make the rules. And some people find it easy and some people not so much. So let's sort of put that out there as a thought, right? If you find it easy to feel normal in academic context, win, right? You probably don't need as much support, although you may still need some support. But if you come into a context and you say, people think I'm not normal, I cannot feel normal here. Is it on you to get normal? or is it on the system to figure out a way to help you not feel abnormal? And some of us would say it's on the system. So here's another sort of set of terms that kind of goes along with this. Neurodiversity is everybody's different. But some brains are less different than others maybe. Some brains can fit the norm more easily. Some people's brains can behave in ways that don't make them seem abnormal. And so this is the idea of the neurotypical versus neurodivergent. If you're typical, boom, I'm not talking to the mic, I'll tell you. Something that's typical is something that is maybe statistically more common. Something that is out of the norm, out of the typical, is diverges from the norm. This is actually a term invented by a disabled activist, which basically says if your brain is neurodivergent, it means that the normates don't think that your brain is normal. It doesn't mean that your brain is wrong, it means that your brain is out of expectations. And if you think about it, it's hard to define what the expectations are, and they'll be different at different times. And if your brain is far away enough from expectations, then you might go to somebody and have yourself diagnosed with a particular something, which might get you certain kinds of supports, might get you some kind of medications for your brain to start acting less abnormal. As all of you know, medications also have side effects. And so you have to decide, are the medications for me to act so that people don't think I'm neurodivergent worth it for all the other things that the medications make? Great. And the term was actually designed to be an umbrella term, in the sense that anybody who perceives themselves to be, so again at the top there, these are not so much biomedical terms, terms that have to do with particular diagnoses that are based on biology. They are diagnoses, and some of you may know this is true of all psychiatric diagnoses, based on behavior, based on whether you are coming across as normal, whether you are acting normal, according to a normal, social normal. And so the idea that this person's term is, if you feel out of place, then it means that society has made you feel that way. Your brain is one of many brains, but unfortunately for you, it's not up to the snuff that society wants you to be, or the academic expectations want you to be. So if your brain doesn't click with academic expectations, then what do you do? There may be ways that you can squish your brain into academic expectations, or you may not be able to engage with academic work because people think that you are too dumb. Right? The idea of stupidity is very much connected to the notion that your brain doesn't do the things people expect that you should. So this could go a lot further, but I want to go to UDL. And we can come back to the other things. So UDL is pedagogical framework. It's a set of approaches. It's a set of strategies. It's a set of something that utilizes certain kinds of principles to provide as much access as possible. So universal is a big promise. It cannot deliver. Most of us who work with this understand that it's over-promising, because we can never get everybody, and we'll talk about access in a moment, you can never get everybody in any given anything. But the idea is to strive for, to think of the system as the problem, and not the person who's coming in. So removing barriers proactively. We talk about the curb cut, right? So don't build a curb and then cut it. Build a curb with a curb cut. And that way people can get up the curb, and there we go. People don't have to come and tell us, damn it, give me a curb cut. Have a ramp built with the building so that you don't need to have a ramp built out, and things like that. So again, UDL is trying to create variability so that you don't need to retrofit. Because retrofitting, those of you who are familiar with this, we can talk more about this, is exactly what academic accommodations are for disabled folks. Is you take what exists and you find a way to make it work. And it feels like more work for the person who's trying to make it work. And if in the first place you can create a system that makes more access. So there's a few things here. the order of these 3 bullet points, people put different orders. I put the third one last because it's my favorite. Save the best for last, right? So basically the idea is you should have many different ways to learn a thing. You could read, you could watch a video, you could listen to a podcast. Many different ways, because people have a way of learning better if they engage with multiple different ways. Now, some of you may know that there was a big thing about learning styles a while back. That's been pretty effectively debunked. It isn't that you can only learn one way, but it is true that we learn many ways. And it might be that it's easier for me, and it is, to listen to a podcast about something while I'm doing 6 other things than to sit down and read a long thing. I've gotten used to reading long things because, that's what we have to do as professors, but I don't like it. I'd rather listen to something. It'll click a lot better, it'll keep my interest better. So why not? Why can I not provide these different ways for a student to engage with the material that I'm offering them? Likewise, why can a student not show me that they've learned through a variety of different ways? Lots of people love high-stake tests now. So there's tests, there's presentations, there's making a podcast. There's lots of ways that you can show me that you've learned the thing. Can I accept that? Can I have somebody in my biology class give me a presentation, a oral presentation, one-on-one? Can I have them write an essay? Can I have them write a poem to show me what they've learned about biology this month? Maybe. Why not? If that's how they can do it best. And the last one is my favorite because it's, why should I even care about this? And this is tough. It's a favorite thing for those of us who are in college, teach college, to rant and rave about, those kids who come to college and they're not willing to do this and that. But I think it is true that the way K-12 education has been over the last 15, 20 years, curiosity is not encouraged in K-12. Kids are asked to do things in order to pass high-stake tests. And it's true that students come to college and you encourage them to be curious, and they say, no, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. I've been told what to do, so tell me what to do. And it's not their fault. They've been conditioned to it. So why can I get you to be excited about learning something? Because if any of you have worked with little kids are excited about learning stuff. They love it. And they will learn like this as long as it's something that's interesting to them. If it's not interesting, whatever. So it's on you as a parent to help them be interested in it. Likewise, how can I help you engage? There are different ways I can engage you on a topic that might be ways that I wouldn't have thought of. And how can I learn these things? So this is not a checklist, and I'm quoting Goldman here, but it's a way of being, it's a way of thinking, it's a way of moving. It's an approach. I wanted to just briefly touch on this last essay, and we can talk more about later. This scholar named Matulak says, okay, there are lots of different ways people talk about this kind of universal design, and these other 2 terms get thrown around. One is inclusive design, and the other is design justice. And what she says is, when people talk about inclusive design, it means that the person for whom you're designing is included in the plan. So it's not just me as a professor putting together a course for you, you come, you take it, whatever. It's I talk to you as a student and we figure out together how I can create a course that you can succeed in. So it's usually a recursive process. And all the best design in the world firms do exactly that. They work with their clients to build for what the clients need. And they keep at it until they get what the clients need. Well, can we do that as instructors? It's a challenge. Design justice goes a little further and says the people who need something should be the ones who design it. So that if you're helping to design it, it's not just you are asking them. It's like you are their resource. People come and say, I need this thing done. Help me do it. And you help them do it. And it's up to them to use it however the heck they want. Now that's pretty big in a college situation, right? It's complicated for me to go to my boss and say, hey, my students are going to decide what they want to learn and I'm going to help them learn it. But you can bet that if you give that kind of authority to students, they're going to learn like that. Because they care about learning things they want to care about. And so it's a valuable challenge to think about, can we do some things like this in some situations? So a little bit, and again, I want to be relatively quick about the rest of this because I want to get to this conversation. UDL is great, and one of the things that people point out, people who work a lot with those of us whose brains are non-standard in some ways, they say UDL does not specifically address this. It doesn't address the question of sensory differences. So for example, I'm fortunate that fluorescent lights don't bother me all that much. They bother me a little bit. Some of you may actually hear fluorescent lights when they're on. I bet there are a couple people in this room who do that. Give me the nods. Most people don't, by the way. Some of you who hear fluorescent lights may be bothered by them pretty damn much by half an hour in. So you can't even focus anymore because of the fluorescent lights. So many classrooms have fluorescent lights. So what do you do? Right? And UDL doesn't quite speak to the environment that way. Now, not that it's incompatible. It just says, you think about it. You think about that. But the other piece is that, and respite from sensory input. So a number of students need a break. They're not like, oh, you're lazy because you want a break. No. If they're on a break, they can't pay attention. And so you give them a break, they're back, and they're on. Right? All of us actually have limited attention, which is why I'm trying not to talk too much longer. But some people, because of the way the brains are, can only take in so much information at once. So give them breaks. Well, what if you have students who have a wide variety of different attention spans? So this is part of where certain other things come into play, and I'll go to this next point, this idea of access friction. So access is another way of thinking of this, right? How do you make things so that people can get to them? How do you make things accessible? Some people talk, in fact, about accessible spaces. Disabled friends of mine say there's no such thing. There is a space that's accessible to a person for a purpose on a given situation. But a different person with a similar access need may not find that same thing accessible the next day. So there's no such thing as an accessible bathroom. There are bathrooms that can be more accessible to people with certain kinds of differences, bodily differences, disabilities. And access friction is a fantastic concept, right? In classes where I bring this forward, students say, oh dear. Because neurodiversity, every brain has a different set of requirements. Well, what if, so for example, I mean, this is not so much about brains, but for some people, guide dogs are really important. You know, they need a dog to help them move around. But what if you're in a classroom with somebody who's severely allergic to dogs? What do you do? Some people talk about this as conflicting access needs, but I don't like conflicting because it means it sounds like scarce competition, either one or the other. And maybe it doesn't have to be that way, but there has to be conversation. There has to be, okay, how are we going to solve this? And it's how we going to solve this. So, this is sort of where I want to end this, which is, yes, it is on us as instructors to grow and to think and to learn and to talk to students and other people, not just our own students, but certainly our students, to say, what do you need? And to believe them. It is one of the things that, again, we can talk about this too. A lot of students have this issue where they might have an official accommodation and they go to the faculty member and the faculty member says, well, you look fine to me. It doesn't make sense to me because you look like you do this. And of course, what is the student going to say? I mean, if they're really gutsy, they'll say, heck with you. You know, my attorney's going to come and visit you next. But for a lot of students, like, well, I don't want to be a troublemaker. I'll find a way to go. But even then, if we can believe students when they tell us what they need, and if we can actually ask them in the first place, if we can build so that it might not need to ask us, build our course, build our places, build our communities, so that people will walk in and say, okay, I haven't had trouble getting here, right? There is a curb cut, intellectually or otherwise. Build them that way, but then ask. I always have an anonymous or a survey, individual survey for all my classes. I say, is there anything about this class that I can make more accessible for you? Now, if I have 300 students and I get 300 different answers, then it's my turn to figure out what I can do. Right? So it's easier to do the fewer people you have, the fewer access friction moments you have, but the opportunity. And then the point is, can we have everybody help with this? Can students help students with access? Our staff are amazing people. How can we all help each other with access? Because community is where it's at. right? So I'm involved extensively at UT in wellness initiatives, whatever that means. No, it's actually good stuff. I mean, we're trying to help people not be as overwhelmed as they actually are. And a lot of that has to do with individual strategies. But from my mind, if we don't help each other out, then ain't no way that any individual is going to make it, right? It's in community that we can support each other, that we can look out for each other. And students really rise to that. You know, in a class, I'll assign a group and I'll say, okay, this group of 6, you are watching out for each other. If somebody can't come, that's cool. Just talk, you know, make sure you talk to your buds about it. Because you're accountable to your buds. I don't care if you come or you don't come, right? I'd love it if you came, but if you can't come, talk to your buds, because they can help you. And they do. And that's awesome. And that's a lot of where I think this access can happen. Now, it's on me to facilitate it, but it's on all of us, I think, to help make it happen. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it. Can we make small changes, even small changes, to improve? And because I think the very fact that we are asking students what you need, even if we can't always fulfill it, shows that we're there for our students, right? We're not the enemy. We're not the person who gives nasty grades. We are here together to try to make this a great place, like you all are here with us. So again, a whole bunch of things at the end. I'm going to go back to the first slide if you want to click on the QR code. You can email me as well, whatever you'd like. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff because this is what makes my day, and being here with you all makes my day as well. So thank you all for having me, and I'm gonna ask for the rest of our panel to come up, and we can all talk about this. Thank you.
There are a few more lunches if you want to have them. I'd like to introduce the rest of our panel. First, we have Dr. Drusilla Martinez. Dr. Martinez is an information technology consultant at Texas Lutheran University with over 15 years of experience in both online and in-person teaching. She specializes in accessibility, universal design, instructional design, and adult learning theory. Dr. Martinez holds a doctorate in leadership from the University of Cumberland and certifications in 504 coordination, digital accessibility, and youth mental health first aid. A recipient of the 2016 TXDLA Award for Excellence in Distance Learning, she is also the co-author of the chapter Building a Barrier-Free Online Library in the 2023 book Differing Abilities and the Library, Fostering Equity for Patrons and Staff with Disabilities. Beyond academia, she enjoys riding her motorcycle, volunteering with the San Antonio Rodeo, and jogging along North Padre Island. Dr. Martinez brings a unique blend of technical expertise, inclusive design advocacy, and lived experience to conversations on neurodivergence and universal design. And we have Sarah Westerfield. So Sarah Westerfield is the Director of Counseling and Accommodation Services at TLU. In addition to being a licensed professional counselor supervisor, Sarah has spent time as a service coordinator for adults with disabilities and is a certified ADA coordinator currently serving TLU students. So I'd like to open the floor to the panel to, if you have any opening statements about your specificity, anything you'd like to say.
I like to say that there's a reason why they call me a consultant. That is AKA Jack of all trades, as you heard from my bio. So I work out of information technology, but I support students, faculty, and staff in, lots of things. But my passion has always been accessibility, universal design, and inclusivity for those who learn outside of the norm.
And I'm the Director of Counseling and Accommodation Services. That means that I review and help determine the reasonable and appropriate accommodations for our students with documented disabilities, and just help them get access to education or housing or other ways of participating on campus. That's, sorry, something else slipped out of my brain, but yeah, we'll start with that.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we'll open the floor to questions as well. So be thinking about what you would like to ask. The first question I would like to ask is about technology. So what role does technology play in UDL? And if I could use the buzzword, how can AI or can AI help to facilitate some of these things?
So, where shall I start? That's a very loaded question. So I'm going to start with the basic part of that component, and it's before the AI part, and that is with technology. There are so many tools that you can use to help anything that you're delivering digitally or within your classroom, face-to-face, that you can use to help make sure that the information you're sharing is accessible by most everyone in any situation. So, for example, you might have recorded a lecture because you may have someone who has a need that maybe they are deaf or hard of hearing, but you're also helping someone who maybe has English as their second language listen to the pronunciations of the words. You might have someone who is an undiagnosed cognitive disability that needs some assistance with processing what they hear. They can slow the speed, they can increase the speed. And then you have AI, which there are tools out there. They can take and listen to an entire video and summarize it for them. Or they can ask it, can you put that in another language? Or can you say it another way? And so AI becomes very important to these learners in how they absorb the content that they're trying to increase that learning gap from, right? So those things are important. So technology, and here on campus, when I have instructors that Sarah tells them, hey, I have this accommodation that is needed, but they're not sure how to approach it, it often comes to us as a ticket, what we call a ticket, an ISL ticket, and 99% of the time, if it has accessibility accommodations on it, it's going to get assigned to me, and I'm going to help them out and help you. And so I am constantly learning new things, and it's former who's back there. Excuse me, pardon me. And that's how I want to introduce that conversation, so we can get some questions you may have about that.
Yeah, if I can jump in from my perspective, I'll say that all technology is assistive technologies, pens and paper, blackboards and so forth, but absolutely people who have disabilities often already know what they need. And I'm going back to, if you can believe your student when they say, could I have this version? Because it's entirely possible they've learned that that's what comes to the K-12. But some students don't yet know. And as all of you know, when you get to college, and difficulties become much more intense, and people who may not have needed certain kinds of support in K-12 may need them now, may or may not have diagnoses. So exactly what you say, it's so important to trust the experts on campus as well, because I lean on the pros at my campus a lot. And I've learned to do some things on my own because I've done them enough times, but the first few times I ran, pleading to the pros and say, oh my gosh, can you do this for me because I don't know how and I'll pay attention, so next time maybe I won't bug you. So what I'll say is this, your pros are doing 99% of everything. If you can, once you've seen how it's done, if you can learn how to do it yourself, it's actually kind of interesting to learn how to do something using a different technology because it helps you learn it a different way yourself. So I recommend it, but of course, if you have spare time. And many of you who are teaching also are very loaded too. So yay teams, yay villages that do this. But yeah, technology, absolutely.
And this is a good time to point out that we all probably use some of that assistive technology and some versions of AI already in our daily life. When we use predictive text, when we use voice to text, when we use spell check and autocorrect in creating documents or emails. So they help us all.
Absolutely. If I could ask now about this idea of inclusive design and design justice, if we could include some words here, equality versus equity versus justice. How does all of this combine and conflict and bring us understanding?
if I can briefly jump in, the equality versus equity, it took me a while to get it through my thick head. But it's really important. The fact that everybody having the same thing doesn't mean that everybody's going to succeed the same way. And so differentiation is really important. It is part of what IDEA is all about, what K-12 education is all about. It's not always done well, but it's part of what it's about. Can we do that as well for us? So can we accept that somebody who needs extra something or something different isn't just special pleading, isn't just lazy, but truly does need that thing? And can they have as much choice and agency as possible? It's tough for us faculty sometimes because we're the experts. We get to tell people what they're supposed to learn. But I can tell you, and you've had this experience too, that when you get to decide what you get to learn, you'll learn a lot faster than that.
And I always go back to this cartoon meme when people ask about the difference between equitable and quality, and it goes back to the fence watching a baseball game, and you have people of different heights standing there, and to make them all see over the fence, one's standing on a box this high, one's on a box this high, one's here, and they all look like they're the same height. But really, all they had to do was remove that fence. Why is it a wooden fence? You know, if it's a safety issue, can it be chain link? And what about chain link? If you paint it black, it looks almost see-through, but it's still there and same effective. If it's silver, you can't see through it so much, right? So those are some of the things that help you identify with what is the difference between quality and equitable access and how you perceive things and absorb it. So I love that cartoon. It's framed in my house. In a box right now, but I'm gonna pull it up.
There it is, right behind us.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think y'all both addressed that pretty well, but you can see in looking at, let's start with the second panel there, we've got 3 people of different heights trying to look over this opaque fence, and they each have a box to stand on, which makes the tallest one have just a fantastic view, and the middle height one be able to see just fine, and the shortest one still is not able to see over the fence. That's equality. Everyone got the same thing, right? But equity is that next panel, where our tallest person does not need a box, so they don't use it. The person with the middle height has 1 box and can still see just fine, and that shorter friend of theirs has 2 boxes and can also now see fine. So that's everyone not getting the same thing, but everyone getting what they need. And like Drusilla said earlier, the justice is simply removing that opaque fence and replacing it with something else. Or no fence. In this case, no fence, but a chain link fence also would do the trick.
And the first image in this particular version of it is a little provocative because it suggests that in reality, the resources are distributed so those who may not need as much or actually have more resources. That's a slightly different argument, but it's there.
I think
Like
that,
if you offer extra credit points, the students that need it won't do it, and the students that don't need it will do it, and the ones who need it won't, so it's the same concept.
Right.
Think about how you're helping them succeed to raise that grade. It's not always by offering them opportunity to get extra points, because that may not be what's gonna help them succeed.
Okay, I'd like to open the floor now to any questions. I will repeat your question for the video, for the sake of the video. Do you have any questions?
Don't make us call on you.
I have a question. I want to see the variance here. If you're a student, whether it's grad student or undergrad, will you raise your hand? And then if you're faculty here, only faculty, staff, member of the community. Awesome. Thank you. I just want to see who our audience is.
we also have some teachers.
Okay, you do.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question while you're thinking? So do be thinking about your questions so that you can raise your hand next. What examples have you used in your own teaching or in your own profession of technology in UDL or being able to change things or this inclusive learning and being able to include students in how they learn? Can you give us any specific examples?
I just had one pop to mind, and so I'll just share the one real quick. When you're sharing images, using the alternate text. If the image is the only way that information is going to be conveyed, please describe the pertinent information in the alternative text, whether it's a document or on social media. That can be extremely helpful.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves, and it's no offense to anyone in here if you've gotten an email from me that says, hey, this was great information. Would you mind next time describing what's in the image down below for our patrons that are using a screen reader or a read aloud or something of that nature? It is often forgotten that they will use the image in marketing to share something, but they're not thinking about the individuals that are in our community that can't see that image and put it in text format if you don't, especially if it needs more than just an alternate text. Because sometimes it's not a screen reader, it's just someone can't physically discern maybe colors, or if you're like me, sometimes light's too bright, sometimes I need more light, sometimes I need less light, and if you put anything with polka dots in it, I cannot stare at it because my eyes will start just jumping. And then if you don't always call out, say, oh, you're the one member in our community that is blind. Can you please test all this for me? That is not their job. just saying, that's not their job. But yeah, think about those things. Do not use the images as solely. And it's another passion with that because sometimes you're in a class and you're trying to convey, like let's say we're in a management class and they're discussing harassment and hostile environment and how it affects the individual. And I had a course where I just had a picture of this person and they're sitting there like this. And the description is gentleman sitting with his hand on his forehead. Well, no, the description should have been in environments where an employee feels is hostile, oftentimes they feel anxious. That's really what the meaning of the photo was. Right. It wasn't that he was sitting there with his hand on his forehead. So the alternative text needs to fit what you're trying to convey.
Yeah. That's a great point. That really it is what the image is designed to show you. For UDL, the ways that I've used universal design, I was trying to think of a straightforward way. The way I use it most, I think, is in terms, and I was describing this to you earlier, in terms of attendance. When we all went on lockdown in the spring of 2020, many of us had to quickly learn how to use Zoom and other kinds of remote technologies. And then we came back a year-ish later, and students were still getting sick, and some students didn't want other students to come to class sick, so they would get sick. And so, because I already had the Zoom set up, I still had a Zoom, and people came, and I had a Zoom, and people could choose whether they came in person or via Zoom. And then the technology was tricky, and some students couldn't actually connect in the moment, and so I said, well, I'm going to design my assignments so that you can choose, so everybody does something before class, and then you either come to class and do something, either physically in person or on Zoom, or you can do this exercise after class as well, because it's a reflection exercise based on what happens, and there's a class document that we all generate and that you can look at after class and draw from. Now, if you do that, then you're not there to contribute to your classmates, and you're missing out on that. And that's too bad, but we can't always control what we miss out on. And I'd rather you not miss out on the whole thing. And by the way, if you're in a group and your buddies are looking out for you, they can also ping you and say, hey, this is what we talked about, and so that may complement what. So it's different ways of accessing both the material, but also of showing how you are engaging, different ways of creating access. But I think it is true that it's very different to engage with people online versus in person, and it's especially complicated to do both at the same time. I can tell you classes that I've taught that have been hybrid, where some people are in the physical space and some people are on Zoom. It's harder because if you're all on Zoom, there's a certain way people communicate. right? The back channel, the chat, those of you who are familiar with it, it's actually extraordinarily, there's a great deal of potential there. But if there's some people who have access to the chat and some who don't, then somebody has to be charged with reading what's in the chat. It could be me, it could be somebody else. And again, these are all things that you can solve, but they create layers of complication. But better that than students who are sick can't come, or who have an important job interview, because that's important too, or whose parent is not feeling well and the student needs to go and take care of the parent or their child. A lot of our students, I mean, to be honest, not that many of our students are parents. A lot of them have parents, thankfully. But some of them are parents. Many of them have jobs. Surprisingly, many of the students in our School of Music work almost full-time in order to support themselves to go through college. A lot of our faculty don't think about that. And so if you're asked to take an extra shift, otherwise you're going to get fired, well, who am I to tell you, no, you better come to class? So part of it for me is an issue of understanding that we are complete people, that our students come to work with us, but they also have lives, they have families, they have parents, they have jobs. And if we can convey to them that I understand that, I'm going to try to do what I can to facilitate you to keep doing your work. Most of the time, they're grateful they work twice as hard because they understand that you're on their side. Again, being on all on the same side, that's so huge. And so often we're taught to suspect our students, they're cheating, blah, blah, blah. We're all together, and if we can be, then we make it work.
Can I add that I was actually in that very class that you were talking about,
That's right.
where it was the semester after
That's right.
we had all come back. And I think this is a perfect example of how UDL benefits everyone, because I had a child at that time, and I still do, in fact, yes. I have two now.
Right, yeah.
And I never attended class because I was, at that point, too concerned to put her in a daycare when we still weren't sure what's going on, everything.
Right.
And I benefited greatly from the ability to not physically attend class. So it absolutely works. It works for everyone. And of course, there are some of those tensions that you mentioned, but I would have so much rather been a part of that class in whatever small way I could than not be a part of it at all.
Yeah, and I'll give a similar example again, but for a similar reason. Another doctoral student in a different class had given birth a couple weeks before the beginning of the semester, and understandably, I wasn't gonna make her come and sit in a seminar room after that, and so she attended remotely and she did great. Right, and it wasn't that hard. Now it's a smaller class. It's a class where everybody came and did their best and really came motivated to help each other. These are graduate students in our program, 5, 6 students, and this is their friend, and they want to help her. And so they were part of. If you have a very big class, then it's more complicated. And we could talk about that too, if you all would like. The scaling up, right? That's what people often talk about. Can you scale UDL? Can you scale this kind of attention to students if you have, I don't know how large classes are here, but this semester I'm teaching a class of 250 students, right? Can I UDL 250 students?
Yes.
I have a question kind of related and following up what we mentioned earlier of relying on the individual to ask for what they need or know what they need, and that this transition to college, especially their first semester here, may be very different from the K through 12 setting. Do you have any advice on how to help them navigate that? Is it helpful to provide, here's some examples of types of things, accommodations that could be provided, or referring them to resources, especially when we're faculty who maybe don't have the expertise in what do those specific accommodations
I have 2
look
words.
like?
Oh, they start talking.
Can I just repeat the
Say-
question really quick? I'm so sorry, just for the video. So the question essentially is, how do we help students learn how to advocate for themselves?
And the 2 words I'm gonna say first, and then I'm gonna let them spill, is safe place. Go.
Yeah.
I would ask as the first step that you send them to me.
Yep.
I have a process that is born out of my various experiences in service coordination, that's sort of like case management, but also in counseling. I'm not just looking at the application and what accommodations they requested or only what they had in high school. that wouldn't be an appropriate fit a lot of times anyways. There are a lot of thoughtful questions that I have lined up to help them identify where they may encounter barriers to learning in the classroom setting, in testing, and outside of the classroom. I can't catch everything, and obviously I don't know every class's structure or unique expectations, but I like to think that my office is going to be a really good first stop for helping to identify what some of those needs, what some of those accommodations might be.
Yeah, I'll second that. Our system is slightly different, but we have academic advisors, we have counselors, we have people who are extremely good at helping students figure that out. And it's always a tricky thing to have a faculty-student conversation about these things because you hold a lot of power over them. And it takes a while for students to understand, if they understand, if it's legitimate to understand, that they can mention these things. It's always great to send them to people who are more experienced in such things and have the direct tools to assist them. That said, if a student comes to you and says, I mean, certainly if they have a letter of accommodation, I don't know exactly how you guys do it, but if there is sort of an official statement and they say, here's what I need, and if what they ask is not exactly what's on there, see if you can figure out, I mean, not to get detail, you don't ask about diagnosis, but you say, okay, well, wait a second, the paper says this, and you want that, can you tell me more about that? Because it is true that in some cases, I don't know what happens with you all, the kind of accommodations that are provided can be kind of generic, in the sense that, extra time, right? And what does that mean? And actually, our Center for Disability Services has this really great set of sheets that are sort of designed to foster dialogue between an instructor and a student. Flexibility sheets, right? That give you sort of, can the student do this? Can they do that? You fill it out together, you sign it, you send it back. You guys may have something similar to that. If you don't, if you'd like, I can send you a copy of it. Because when they started doing it, I thought, oh, thank goodness. Because it really helped with the conversation. Yeah.
Yes, would love that. And also having those conversations is imperative. Some students are approved for accommodations, and even though they are directed to have conversations with each of the faculty to understand what that's going to look like, what that's going to mean, sometimes that doesn't happen. So that conversation piece is very important. We have documents that help with certain accommodations, but I'd love to be able to reference what UT is doing.
And back to the initial part of your question, because a lot of students, they don't know that they can advocate for themselves. They are in a K-12 environment from previously, and they are told to respect their teachers, do what they say, blah, 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 blah. They don't know to ask. So yes, provide examples of, hey, when I was in school, I'm transitioning, this or that, or, give them multiple ways, explain the difference between when you should email you directly for personal questions versus when they might use an open discussion board Q&A question that might answer everyone, or, the different avenues, but definitely make them feel in a safe place to approach you because they do not know that they can do that because they came from an environment where they were not typically allowed to do that. Yeah. And it is hard to get them to open up. I have this conversation with several in my household all the time. Don't be afraid to ask. Worst case scenario, you're back where you started. Best case scenario, you're a step ahead.
I have one. I was thinking about the idea of choice, and when you were speaking about we have so many different learning styles, and so to try to help with that, I would just include lots of different types of assessment, oral, written. But you said something was interesting, and I've been thinking about it, to let them maybe choose. And then I'm thinking, my little red flag was about fair grading. Because if they get to choose, then again, they're going to want to do it more, they're going to learn better, it's a whole Montessori approach, right? Yeah. But then I've got to figure out fair grading. Have you actually tried that in your classes?
Okay, so yes, I have. Can I take that?
Oh, I was just gonna say the question.
Okay, yeah, you say it, sorry.
So essentially the question is, how do we ensure fair grading when we have so many different choices in assessment?
Yeah, and so I guess two pieces. And the other part of the question, as I understood it, was would it benefit a student to try a different way of engaging with something, because that's part of learning too. And I think that's valid. Okay, I think it's valid to tell a student, okay, you may feel that you might be more comfortable doing this, but I really would like to challenge you to try it this way as well. And figuring out in a conversation, if they understand why, right? As long as it doesn't feel arbitrary. And especially if the stakes aren't too high, right? Now, the fair grading is a reasonable thing, and let me add, so throw two things in the mix here. One is, if you have an outcome in mind that the student will understand thing X, then your metric of, are they showing it to you through writing, through speaking, whatever, you might be able to trust yourself in figuring out whether they have in fact explained the thing, right? So if you're looking at what does the student need to be able to do, or sorry, well, maybe do, but what do they need to show they know? Then saying you can show that you know by taking a test, you can show that you know by writing a paper, you can show that you know by doing a podcast. In the end, you will be able to tell because you're the expert, right? So in a sense, I think you need to trust yourself that it's less difficult. Now, if you're trying to figure out a B plus and a 9 and so forth, that's always a pain in the neck anyway, right? And so the way I manage that, and it's my sneaky way of doing it, is that I tend to have very low stakes assignments so that you get either 2 points or 1 point or 0. And points build up, sort of like coins in a video game or whatever. And then you learn a certain number of points and it gets equivalent then to a grade. So in that sense, it's actually easier for me to say, well, you did these things, you earned these points, you got this grade. It's not like you gave me this grade, professor. No, you did these things, you got these points, it's equivalent to this grade. So that's a little easier when students question why, because then I can easily say, if you do this whole thing, it's 2 points. If you do half of it, it's 1 point. If you do none of it, that's more helpful for completion than quality assessment. And again, I don't need to tell you, right, what kind of a hairy thing quality assessment is. Now, the way I handle that sometimes, although your mileage may vary, is I have the students assess the quality. So I have self-assessments, and the student says, I did the whole thing and I did everything I could. And you look at them and you say, is that right? Most students actually underestimate themselves. It's actually surprising. Few students shoot high. You actually need to, so it's actually, and again, what I tell my students is, when you go into the real world, whatever that is, when you leave college, you won't get graded, but you will have to do self-assessments. And your boss will have to follow up and verify. And doing an accurate self-assessment of your work is an incredibly valuable skill. Now, I don't know how easy it would be for you to modify that. And I'll say, the way I've gotten to this work is through iterations and teaching courses over and over again and making one little change here, one little change there, and over 10 years, it changes a lot. So I really want to emphasize, it can be daunting to say, oh my God, how am I going to change this whole thing? You don't. You pick a thing that you say, well, I wonder, I could probably do this, and you see how it works. And if it works, then you might say, oh, great, all the things that are like this next year, I can switch them. And if it doesn't work, you say, damn it, okay, I'll do something else, or not. But for me, I get bored doing the same thing every time, right? And it doesn't feel like I'm responsible for my students, because I want to figure out who they are and what they need. So, I mean, I'm happy to talk more about this. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here, but there are strategies. Some of the links that I gave sort of give some direct strategies about that as well. But there are small incremental things that you can do to get around the really difficult thing. Grading is one of the hardest things that we do. Also most boring. Right? So,
Yeah, and getting away from the rubrics that are task-oriented and more assessing truly how much they can express what they've learned, can apply. And so I've done something similar in a couple of my classes, and it depends on what the subject matter is, but I give them the choice. So if you ever come to my desk and you're in my office, you'll see that I have some student assignments hanging on my wall. They were all part of the same assignment. They could choose to write a poem, do a comic book, write a song, write a paper, do a short essay, go take photos to express what I am asking, the topic I'm asking them to address. And of course, I try to use a matrix that says, if you can't just don't take a photo and you're going to also have to, explain what you may have to have a short essay with it, but they get so excited about that last project because they're picking something within their realm that they feel comfortable with, and they get excited to say, how can I show how I know this? And I've done it in Frex, but I've also done it in other courses. I've taught at other community colleges and universities, and every single time it's the favorite assignment. I get really great feedback in giving them that choice. And I have not yet struggled in being able to assess whether they actually grasp that topic, which kind of the topic changes depending on what I'm teaching. But and you can't do it in a room with 250 students, but you can with the smaller classrooms. But and it's fun to play with and experiment, see what the outcomes are, and then you tweak things because you're not going to get it right the first time you try something perfect.
I remember having an assignment very much like that when I was a student here at TLU many years ago in a class called Drives and Behavior, which is still a class in the psych department now, taught at the time by Dr. Scott Bailey. I chose to create a playlist and burn a CD, if that gives you an idea of the era, and then maybe a supplement of some sort to go along with it. I got a B. But that's neither here nor there. I did learn a whole lot in the process, and it was a very exciting project to work on.
Something that I am thinking about while we're talking about all of this, and I'm very new still, I have a year and a half of experience under my belt, so bear with me, but I found that when I was writing exams, I was writing questions that I hoped would teach the students. And I was thinking, why am I writing these assessments to teach the students when hopefully they already know this information? But I found that it was kind of questioning, why am I doing this assessment? What is the purpose of this assessment? Well, it turned out the purpose for me as the professor was to teach them in that moment, even though they should have ideally known that information. And so this semester I'm trying something new with tests. I'm trying something totally different with exams. So that it's a moment of continuous learning instead of just a moment of assessment, which I think has been interesting. We'll see how it goes, but
Kind of like when you ask a multiple choice question, but then you ask them, why did you choose that?
Right.
As a follow-up question.
Yep. That one. To get this out of the way, that lovely picture earlier, that's a picture I took of my hometown in Italy, but this is good, but not as great. Don't look at the man in the...
While you pull that up, I do want to say one other thing. Implementing UDL, especially when you're an established educator already, can seem very daunting. Like Dr. Andrew.
Easier.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like he said, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, I'm sorry. This happens. This is how my brain is different. After about 4 p.m., I can't finish a sentence.
I believe in naps. Yeah. And I didn't get my nap today, so I totally...
Did you read my mind?
UDL can be daunting for
Thank you.
established educators.
Yes, thank you. So yes, UDL can be really daunting, but not only can you take it one piece, one lesson, one assignment at a time, but you can also really evaluate your curriculum to focus on the essential requirements. Am I needing the student to learn to all of this material and to be able to communicate that material in 50 minutes? Or am I needing them to learn this material? Right. And then what of that material? Is it content? Is it a method? Maybe it is, I need them to know how to speak in public and do presentations, right? And so maybe the choice in how that is tested is more limited. Maybe there's no multiple choice question for that, and that's fine. But that boiling back down to essential requirements is meant to also help the instructor when that shift gets a little overwhelming.
That is such great advice. And honestly, in working with UDL and similar kinds of alternative assessment has really made me think a lot about what is it truly that is most important for me that a student walk away from the class with. Because I was trained content. Throw a lot of content, say a lot of things, and students will learn. Sometimes, but not really. And so there are other ways to think about it. I wanted to show you a little UDL thing here that I've done for this class that I'm teaching with 250 students, mostly online. It's a class, an Introduction to Western Music. I use a textbook that I've helped to develop, but this is something that's not textbook related. It's go to a concert and write a concert report. Now, the idea of a concert report is a tried and true thing in intro music classes. So how am I going to approach it with 250 students with one graduate student helping me to grade all of these things? How are we going to do it? Well, how we're going to do it is I'm going to have 7 questions. Is it 7? Maybe it's 8. I forget how many. There's a certain number of bullet point questions, and you need to answer the questions. If you answer them all, full points. If you answer half of them, or if you do part of it, you get half points. If you don't answer any of them, you don't get any points. Super easy to grade. Now, do they answer them well? I don't have much control over that, but that's okay. I'll let go of that because, interestingly enough, I've learned from experience that some of them blow it off, but most of them don't. And I don't have any control with 250 students if some of them blow it off. Now, thankfully, this is a one-off course. It doesn't have to prepare them for the next course in a sequence. And in the next course in a sequence issue, that's more complicated because students need to have certain kinds of capacities, knowledge, information, abilities to be able to move into the next course effectively. And so that requires more planning. But this is a course that is a one-off. And so I tell them, you can answer them with 2 or 3 written sentences. You can see here, those of you who are seeing it. Or you can record yourself answering each of these, if you prefer to tell me. Or you could write an essay, if you like writing essays, 500 to 750 words, that addresses all of these questions. Or if you think you can come up with a different way, come tell me about it. It's a choose-your-own-adventure approach. I almost always have one of those. Very few students ever choose it, but the ones who do come up with the most wacky, awesome things in the world. Right? It's like, good for you for being thoughtful, creative enough, for coming up with your way of expressing this particular thing. Right? And again, the kind of class it is, that is a very valuable skill. And then, the bullet points are pretty basic, but some of them are actually fairly substantial. And if you don't answer them, then you don't get full points. Now, it's 10 points out of 100. You have to do a selfie, because we're in the 21st century. But it shows that you've been there, kind of. Now, people can, do AI, it's fine. I mean, whatever. If you're really desperate to not do this, you'll find a way. People are a little smarter than I am, so I'm not going to worry about that. So if you provide a selfie, you answer all questions with clear, usability, tailored to musical works, full points, no worries. If you only did 2 of these 3, you get 7 points. If you did 1 of the 3, you get 3 points. If you didn't anything, but really the only way to get no points is not to do anything. And I try to do this as much as possible. To say, okay, even if you only did a half job, you still get some. Because you made the effort to do it. And if you do it early enough, you can revise it. Right? We have a deadline and we have a revision deadline, which is a month beforehand. So we'll see how many students, in fact, a number of students have already turned it in. The revision deadline is mid-October. The final deadline is in November, because whatever, you do it, you don't do it, that's a 10 out of 100 points. I try in large classes to do a lot of these completion-based scoring. Now, I don't know how many of you all have to deal with large classes. I'm willing to sacrifice trying to evaluate quality, which is so hard anyway, for giving them a chance to do it the way that will be meaningful for them. Because I found that most of the time, if you give people the space to do something meaningful, it will be meaningful. And I may not right away be able to see, to compare, so you asked about comparing, right? How can I compare a spoken answer to a written answer? Well, I can, but they are both answers that follow the directions and are both answering the same kinds of questions in different ways. So it's more the process that I am encouraging and assessing than the details. Such a cutie. Dang. See? Kids for the win. This is, by the way, you talked about the complexity of having a child in a class. Some people are totally fine with students bringing children. Others are not. And that, it's not a disability to have a child, but frankly, this whole question of access goes in many directions besides just official disability. It has to do with life and how we are with people and we care. So, yeah.
And you're giving them the tools of how to succeed in the wild because they've learned how to find the answer or find a solution to a posed situation. Versus if you're just giving them memorization things, they're not really learning how to find that solution, how to survive in the wild, how to, when your boss gives you an assignment, they don't tell you, don't use a book, don't look it up, I want you to produce this without any help, nothing, they're not gonna do that. They wanna know that you can go and find what you need to do to be successful to do the task that they put ahead of you.
We have time for maybe one or two more questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm excited to get into the references that you provided. And I was wondering if you have start with this one. You have one that you recommended, and if the others, if you have a go-to source.
Let me see. Let me pull them up. Read them all by tomorrow. Actually, I'll see if I can do this, talk through this, do multitask while I find the thing. That's long.
While he's looking, I'm gonna say, don't make me think, and don't hold me to the name of the author right now, because I can't think of it right now. It's a really thin book. It was written a while ago. It is still very applicable to today. It's my favorite book to help you figure out how to lay out content on your course pages or whatnot, so that you are succinct and accessible. But it is my favorite book, and it is short and sweet and it's easy read, and it will transform the way you develop your content for your students and your learners, or if you work anywhere what you need to relay information. Don't make me think. It's my favorite.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, thinking about visual accessibility is really important. Fonts to use. There's a lot of stuff out there about that. My personal favorite is this Dolmetsch essay, J. Dolmetsch, Universal Design Place to Start, partly because it's kind of, he writes very well, and it's kind of snarky, and it's short, and it also has, at the end, a link to a database of a squillion different things that you could try. His whole point is, a checklist is not what you want. What you want is just lots of options. You want to be overwhelmed by the options, because that's what your students are dealing with, and then you want to work with them to figure out what you're going to do in any given case. But it's difficult. I mean, what I tend to do in my classes, I'll give some things for people to look at ahead of our meeting, and I always tell them I'm going to give you more than you can possibly look at. Because the idea is that each person should pick a couple of things, and collectively we'll come up with something, comments that we all think are useful. So crowdsourcing is a big thing for me. But that Dolmetsch piece is good. If you're interested in the whole question of neurodiversity and neurodivergence, this actually, frankly, Sarah Silverman, she has a Substack, if you do Substack. If you look for Sarah Silverman, she does a lot of really good things about pedagogy and neurodivergence, and she did this collaboration with Emily Donahoe, who did a whole series last year on alternative grading more generally, which is a whole other rabbit hole we could go down, but we won't. But if you're ever interested, that's another of my rabbit holes. But they're essays that sort of come at the intersection of the two. I guess, yeah, can you see Silverman, right? Any of these by Silverman, because then you'll be able to bump around and find other things. This final one, the tool I like is good because it helps to you have to think about who gets to decide, and for whom are you deciding. As an instructor, are you deciding for your students? Or are you working with your students to decide what they need? Or are your students telling you what they need and you help them? And how can you do that? Is that available? Is that feasible? Does that fit the kinds of requirements that your licensing organization has? I mean, there are a lot of structures out there that say, well, you have to do things this way. And as an instructor, we often feel like, well, I can't do anything differently because the licensing agency says yada. What's also true is licensing agencies are also changing, right? And those of you who are familiar with them know this more than I do. So those are three. Okay, I'll give you one final thing because I just love their name. The Stimpunks. This group, I'll just click on them because they're fun. Let's see where they go. There they are. So this is it's a group out of Austin. So Kokum or something. It's a group of non-academics, but people with smarts who identify as neurodivergent, who have come up with this massive encyclopedia of information about neurodivergence, but also how to cope. And they have lots of cool things out there, and this is their UDL page. And so they have a variety of things here and there. What I like about this is that it's written by people for people, right? So another thing that I'm really interested in is accessible writing, accessible reading. A lot of academic writing is designed to not be understandable because it's for the, you know, I mean, I hate to be that way, but it's also, you know, experts talking to experts. That's what it's built for. And in order to be an expert, you need to write like an expert. So young experts learn how to write in this inscrutable way because otherwise they're not going to be perceived as experts. These folks don't play that game, right? They don't got to show anybody anything, and they're going to write in ways that they think is really direct and understandable. And I find that really helpful to show students to say, look, you need to be able to write for lots of different people, because otherwise, whatever knowledge you have stays within a box. So, those are a few. Thank you.
And I forgot to summarize that question for the
sorry.
video, but I forgot to do that. The question was just, where should we start with all of the resources that were provided? Perhaps time for one more question. I have a very brief question if no one else. Okay. My question is, how do we protect our own bandwidth with regard to these things? How do we make sure that we don't burn out so that we can continue to offer these things to students?
Just because you can doesn't always mean you should. That's my go-to phrase.
Keep going. I want to see if we can find a particular thing that I was going to share.
No, I was just, with the advent of being able to reverse the classroom, support a face-to-face class with an online classroom for your students, be very careful about overwhelming them with too much information that they have so many resources to choose from that they're going 90 directions and they're not getting the one concept you really want them to grab, because sometimes more is not better. Get them what they need to know to grasp the one thing you need them to learn in that moment, and not overwhelm them with too many. Because another student asks for more information, you go, oh, well, I'll just put it out there for everyone. Because you're going to have the one student that thinks they need to read everything you link to and find everything, and they're slowly going to fade away because you've now supplied too much information. It is okay to supply something sometimes to just a student that asked and not always supply it to everyone. And then there are other circumstances where students are going to ask something, well, if one asked it, more have that same question. So it's a skill to learn to discern when to share with all versus when to just share with the one.
I think my input sort of segues from there. If you are already an educator, you have students with accommodations, I would start there. What accommodations are you seeing requested most often and utilized most often? And are there UDL shifts that you can make that might make those accommodations unnecessary or less necessary?
Being proactive instead of reactive. So if you're building it that way to begin with, you're not swimming a stream backwards when you have a student that needs a special accommodation.
If I can jump in, I was trying to find the specific link, and I can't right now because this is the thing about agreeing to not remember everything. You say, oh, I'll just search for it, and then you don't find it. That's okay. You don't find it, right? We are imperfect humans, and so maybe we start there, right? That we give ourselves permission to not get it right, either the first time or the second time or the 14th time, and and give the compassion to ourselves that we also want to give our students. Also, certainly, crowdsourcing. I mean, you guys have here people who care, people who are ready to help you, people who are ready to give you additional resources. And I guess what I was looking for was a really good essay by somebody I follow about scope of practice. Doctors talk about scope of practice all the time. They say, I am a surgeon, but I don't do these procedures. I know what I can do. And I know what I'm capable of doing well, and I don't do things that I'm not capable of doing. Even as we expand our scope of practice, sometimes we also get to decide what our scope of practice is. And we get to know who the experts are to whom we send the referrals. and say, okay, I would love to do everything for you, but I can't, otherwise I'll burn out, but here are the people who can give you this piece. It's hard because a lot of us went into this business because we want to support it. And also, we learned that not only can we not help everybody, but we have to be careful. I have some disabled, a good disabled friend who talks about the helpy helpers who help. Right? People who really want to help, or really want to help you, whether or not you want to be helped or not. And this is a whole other topic, but we got to be careful to not offer help that's not wanted to. And so again, figure out what can we do, who can we send people to, and can we ask people what do you need, and we can say, I'm sorry I can't give you that, but I know I can, or I think I know I can, or you deserve that, and we can't find it right now, but we'll figure out a way. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Can we give a round of applause to our panel?